What happens when the world's most high-reversal prince meets America's sharpest tongue on live TV? Viewers expected charity talk and polite conversation. But what unfolded was an emotional train wreck no one could stop watching. Howard Stern was told to play nice. Prince Harry was told to stay composed. But when two storms collide under the lights of daytime television, someone's bound to get burned. The stage at The View was set like any other morning. The mugs were placed perfectly, cameras rolled smoothly, and producers paced with the barely concealed anxiety of people who knew chaos could strike at any second. But today wasn't just any morning. Today's lineup had two names no one would have dared put together until now. Howard Stern had been invited to co-host the show for the week, an odd choice for a daytime program built on lively but measured conversations. Yet ratings had dipped recently, and producers needed a jolt. That jolt arrived with untamed hair, sunglasses that he refused to remove indoors, and a sarcastic smirk that screamed, "I'm going off script." Seated beside Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar, Howard looked like a wolf in a cardigan store. Joy had leaned over before the show started and whispered, "Don't start anything." Howard had chuckled. "You know me, I'm all about peace and harmony." Nobody bought it. Enter Prince Harry, wearing a tailored gray suit with a crisp navy shirt open at the collar. He stepped onto the set with the calm professionalism of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The crowd erupted in applause, and Harry gave that familiar half-smile, part humility, part media training. He waved politely, nodded to the hosts, and took his seat directly across from Howard. Whoopi started the show. Today on The View, we're honored to be joined by Prince Harry to talk about his foundation work, mental health advocacy, and his new documentary on veteran Howard gave an exaggerated bow. "And here I thought we were talking about royal scandals. Guess I read the wrong briefing." Laughter bubbled from the audience, but there was a slight tightening in Harry's jaw. Still, he kept his composure. "Nice to meet you, too." Howard. Whoopi smoothed things over quickly, redirecting the conversation to Harry's work with veterans. The prince was in his comfort zone now. He spoke with passion, using buzzwords like impact, healing, and awareness. He nodded humbly when the audience clapped. On paper, it was perfect. But Howard wasn't here for paper. "So, let me ask you something." Howard interrupted mid-answer, leaning forward, voice casual, but blade sharp. "You say you're working to help veterans reclaim their voices. Is that why you keep telling your story over and over again? Because you lost yours?" A beat of silence. Harry blinked. Whoopi cleared her throat. Joy looked up from her note cards. Even the floor manager hesitated behind the camera. Harry chuckled. Lightly, "I think storytelling is a powerful tool, Howard. When used for good, it creates empathy and connection." Howard nodded, slow, deliberate. Sure, but when does storytelling become self? You're not just telling story, mate, you're building a brand. The smile on Harry's face stiffened. "That's an interesting take." Howard shrugged. "I'm just saying, most people don't heal from trauma by going on Oprah and signing Netflix deals." Laughter, again, nervous this time. Joy stepped in. "Let's not jump ahead. Harry, tell us about the work you're doing this month with your new veteran initiative." Harry turned to her, grateful for the reset. "Yes, absolutely. We're working on integrating service members into civilian life, ensuring they have not just physical support, but emotional and social networks." As he spoke, Howard leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, studying him. When Harry finished, Howard leaned into the mic again. "Do you ever miss it?" Harry frowned. "Miss what?" "The attention, the palaces, the headlines, being the golden boy of the monarchy." Harry smirked, but his voice held tension. "That was never who I was. That was a role others cast me in." Howard tilted his head. "Right. So, all of this stepping away from royal life, moving to California, doing tell-all interviews isn't about staying relevant." Whoopi shot him a glare. "Howard, no, I mean it," he continued. "Look, I get it. You wanted freedom, but you've traded one spotlight for another. If you really wanted out, you'd disappear, not launch a media empire." Harry's expression hardened. "I don't think I need to justify my choices to you." Howard raised both hands. "Hey, I'm just asking what everyone's thinking. You can keep using words like healing and platform, but from where I'm sitting, it looks a lot like branding." Joy's voice cut in, sharp but calm. "Let's take a breath. We're all here for an open conversation, but let's keep it respectful." Harry didn't respond immediately. His posture stiffened, his fingers tapped lightly against his knee, a controlled rhythm betraying growing irritation. "Respect goes both ways," Harry finally said. "I've spent years trying to shift focus to causes that matter. If people can't separate that from tabloid narratives, maybe that says more about them than it does about me." Howard smiled, polite but biting. "Sounds rehearsed." Another silence. Even the audience, primed for daytime cheer, seemed unsure whether to laugh or a cringe. Joy's voice broke the moment. All right, we're going to keep this going, but when we come back from break, we'll dive into Harry's upcoming charity gala." And Howard interrupted, "Can't wait to hear how much the tickets cost." Harry exhaled audibly, his jaw clenched. The polite prince was starting to fade. As the show cut to commercial, the camera zoomed out, catching Howard with a mischievous grin and Harry's cold stare locked directly on him. Whatever this was, it was just getting started. The View returned from commercial, break with forced smiles and surface-level energy. Whoopi's voice tried to set the tone. We're back with Prince Harry talking about his recent charitable efforts and his mission to support veterans and mental health worldwide. The cameras panned across the host before landing back on Harry, who had adjusted his posture, shoulder straighter, smile tighter. His finger still tapped his thigh, the only sign of discomfort he allowed himself. Howard Stern, however, seemed even more relaxed than before, almost too relaxed. His arms were spread across the back of his chair, like he owned the studio. Joy tried to steer the interview back to safety, focusing on Harry's recent gala, but Howard wasn't done yet. So, let me get this straight, Howard began, his voice casual. You left royal life to escape the media, and yet here you are on the most watched morning show in America. Harry nodded slowly. Yes, I left an institution. I didn't leave my voice. Howard grinned. But you sure didn't leave the cameras. The audience chuckled, but this time the sound was uneasy. Harry leaned forward slightly. There's a difference between controlling your narrative and being controlled each one. Interesting, Howard replied, tilting his head like a curious cat. But don't you think constantly reminding people of how miserable you were is kind of exhausting? Joy jumped in, trying to redirect. Let's not. No, it's a fair question, Harry said, his voice calm, but clipped. When you've lived under a microscope your entire life, you learn that silence often benefits those who hurt you. Speaking up isn't complaining, it's reclaiming. Howard smirked. Sounds like a therapist wrote that one. This time there were no laughs, just tension. Thick, tangible. Whoopi stepped in gently. Let's shift gears. Harry, your children. How are they adjusting to life in California? Harry's face softened a touch. They're thriving. They love the outdoors, the space. They're growing up free. Howard couldn't resist. Free from what? Rules, structure, accountability. Harry turned toward him fully now, free from being born into an identity they didn't choose from tabloids before they could speak from cameras in the bushes. Howard leaned in, voice low and baiting, but still with Netflix cameras in the living room. Right? That did it. Harry didn't explode. He didn't shout, but his entire presence shifted. I'm not here to debate my children's privacy with someone who made a career out of invading others, he said coldly. If you think being blunt makes you brave, you've mistaken cruelty for honesty. For a beat, it looked like Howard might actually back off. But then, with that unmistakable stern sneer, he fired back. Tell me something, Harry. Without the crown, without the title, are you even interesting? Joy gasped. The studio fell into full silence. Howard continued, softer but sharper. Who are you when you're not a royal? Who are you without scandal, without Meghan, without a documentary crew following you? Just a guy in LA doing podcasts. Harry stared at him. No words, just a look so piercing, it silenced Howard's smirk for a moment. Whoopi, trying to save the show, cut in like a lifeguard diving into a riptide. We're going to take another break. When we return, we'll be discussing Harry's recent work in Africa and the global reach of his mental health platform. But even as the music played and the screen faded to commercial, the atmosphere refused to reset. Harry sat motionless, eyes still on Howard. Howard looked amused, slightly less smug, but still provocative. Joy reached for her mug, like it might anchor her. The View's control room buzzed with a whispered panic. Howard had crossed the line, and Harry wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The View returned from its second break, but the shift in energy was impossible to ignore. The smiles were thinner, the laughter was gone. The table felt like a chessboard now. Every gesture calculated, every sentence a potential strike. Whoopi, ever the professional, resumed with forced composure. We're here with Prince Harry talking about his work with mental health awareness and global advocacy. Harry, I know Africa has been important to you, but Howard interrupted again. Hold that thought, Whoopi. I have one more question. Whoopi's face twitched, but she said nothing. Howard turned to Harry, eyes narrowing. Harry, what's it like being the second most famous person in your marriage? The audience gasped. Several producers off camera audibly cursed. Harry blinked, stunned into silence. Howard didn't stop. I mean, let's be honest here. People don't buy the book because you wrote it. They buy it because of her. Meghan is the headline. Meghan is the brand. Meghan is the controversy. You're just the plus one. Joy Behar's hand flew to her mouth. Harry's face darkened like a gathering storm. His jaw tightened. His voice, when it finally emerged, was ice. She's my wife, not a headline. Howard raised an eyebrow. No, she's both, and she knows it. That's what makes her smart. But let's not pretend this whole rebranding of Prince Harry wasn't engineered around her charisma. Tell me, was stepping out of the shadow of your brother worth stepping into hers? Harry sat forward. His calm was cracking, but he tried to hold the line. I stepped out of a toxic institution that destroyed my mother. I chose my family. I chose truth over tradition. If that threatens you, Howard, maybe it's because you've never had to risk anything for someone else in your life. Howard didn't flinch. You chose publicity over privacy. You chose production deals over quiet healing. Don't act like you're Gandhi with a Netflix contract, Whoopi cut in. Her voice firmer now. All right, enough. Let's dial it down. Gentlemen, we're talking about real people, real families. Harry turned to Whoopi. No, let him keep going. Clearly, this is why I was invited here. Howard shook his head. You were invited because people still care. That's the only currency you have left. But at some point, people are going to stop listening if all you do is whine about a life most of us couldn't dream of affording. Harry's knuckles were white now, gripping the table. I didn't choose that life. I was born into it. Howard leaned in. And then you chose it to monetize it. Sparebro, Spotify, Netflix, you're not rebelling. You're repackaging. Joy tried to jump in again. Okay, we're going to pivot to no, Howard said firmly, staring down Harry. He wants to be real. Let's be real. You have no idea what it's like to live every day with a target on your back. Harry snapped, his voice rising now. To have your wife vilified, your children photographed by strangers. You sit behind a microphone and throw rocks. That's not bravery. That's cowardice with a saddleboard. Howard's tone cooled even more. And yet, you're still here, still doing interviews, still talking because you need it. Because the moment the cameras stop rolling, you're no longer the victim. You're just a guy with a famous last name and no real job. Silence. Stinging electric. Silence. Even Whoopi and Joy had nothing left to say. Then Harry stood. It wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was quiet, controlled, but ominous. He stared at Howard for a full beat before speaking. You know nothing about my life, and frankly, I've wasted enough of it trying to explain myself to people like you. Howard looked up at him, still seated, still calm. Then maybe stopped trying. Harry's eyes burned. Maybe I will. Then he turned to Whoopi and Joy, his voice softer. Thank you both, but I won't sit here and let my family be reduced to a punchline. Joy opened her mouth to say something, anything, but Harry was already stepping away from the table. The camera followed him as he walked off the set. The audience didn't clap, they didn't move. No one breathed. Howard sat back slowly, not victorious, not smug, just steady. Whoopi finally broke the silence. Well, we'll be right back. Fade to black. The view returned from commercial, but something had changed. The camera, usually focused on a full table of banter and laughter, showed only 3 people now. Whoopi, Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Howard Stern. Alone in the seat once filled by Prince Harry. The crowd, still in a daze from what had just unfolded, remained eerily quiet. Whoopi tried to hold the show together, her voice taut with force.com. Well folks, as you just saw, Prince Harry has left us a little early this morning. We want to thank him for joining us. Howard cut in gently. No, don't do that, Whoopi. Don't pretend everything's fine. Whoopi turned to him, surprised. Joy leaned back, watching with weary eyes. Howard cleared his throat and looked directly into the camera. Let's be real, this wasn't a PR segment. This wasn't the usual smiling, nodding, everyone gets a mug kind of interview. This was a real conversation. He paused. And maybe that's exactly what's been missing all along. There was a murmur from the audience, some leaning in, some folding their arms, unsure if they were about to hear an apology or another punch. Howard continued, Look, I get it. Prince Harry has lived a life none of us can fully comprehend. Born into royalty, raised under global scrutiny, losing his mother in a tragedy that should never have happened. That scars you. He looked down for a moment, then back up. But I wasn't attacking that kid. I was challenging the man who has made a fortune telling that kid's story. The studio remained silent, the tension curling in the air like smoke. I've interviewed thousands of people, rock stars, actors, presidents. They all want the same thing, control over how they're perceived, and Harry is no different. But when you step into the public arena, when you monetize your trauma, you invite questions, hard ones. Whoopi leaned in, her voice softer now. You don't think you pushed too far? Howard turned to her with genuine seriousness. Of course I did. That's my job. If I don't ask the question, who will? That was the first time anyone didn't treat him like glass. Joy chimed in. But do you regret it? Howard paused. The question lingered, then he shrugged. I regret that he walked off. Not because I care about the drama, but because we were finally getting somewhere. For once, we weren't just dancing around the truth. He turned to the camera again, more personal. Now, Harry's not a villain, but he's not a saint either. He's a man stuck between a world he couldn't control and a spotlight he won't step out of. And maybe that's the real story. The audience began to clap slowly, then louder. Whoopi raised her eyebrows. Joy gave a slight nod as if conceding a point she didn't want to say out loud. Howard looked almost surprised by the response, but he didn't smile. He just leaned back, arms folded. Then off camera, a stagehand whispered into Whoopi's ear. She blinked, then looked at the audience. "Well, we're getting word that Prince Harry has left the building." He declined to comment further. The camera shifted to a wide shot. Howard stood, straightened his jacket, picked up his mug, then he turned to Joy and Whoopi. "Thanks for letting me stir the pot." Joy cracked a smile. "You didn't stir it, Howard. You flipped the whole damn pot over." Laughter, nervous but real, this time. As the outro music rolled, the screen faded to black. But one final message appeared in white text. "In a world full of polished interviews, maybe the truth is what we need most, even when it hurts." What did you think of this explosive clash between Prince Harry and Howard Stern? Did Howard go too far, or was he the only one brave enough to ask what everyone else was thinking? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was this a raw moment of truth or a royal overreaction? And don't forget, subscribe for more legendary showdowns, truth bombs, and talk show moments you'll never forget. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next collision of egos, truths, and reputations.